Thank you, Nick. How is everyone today? This is beautiful. I mean, who could hate this country looking out at it? Look how lovely everything is around us. We have a beautiful day. If only all this were used for good instead of evil right here in the heart of the empire. Look at it. Did anyone come here to D.C. in order to get here? Did they cross state lines? Great. I love to see that because the whole point of this is to overcome barriers, not just ideological barriers or physical barriers as well, to come together and say that we're tired of this war, as many of the speakers have mentioned before me. So I'm honored to be here. I want to, as others have emphasized, how inspiring it is to see former presidential candidates, 4 of them, Dr. Jill Stein, Tulsi Gabbard, Ron Paul, and Dennis Kucinich. They each have their own flavor, but they all decided to show up today because they recognize that even though they each come from something different, we don't always get the opportunity to come together and show what this country is actually about, which is what I see in front of me today. I'm also disappointed that there are some people who couldn't share the stage with me today. Is Scott Ritter in the audience? I want to give it up to Scott Ritter. He unfortunately couldn't speak today, but I just want to point out that more than anybody on this stage, Scott is actually someone who knows what it feels like to risk and lose everything, and he did it in order to stand up to the greatest humanitarian catastrophe so far this century, the Iraq War. So thank you, Scott. Unfortunately, even though she's back here with us, you know her and love her. I do too. Medea Benjamin, a legend of the anti-war movement. She couldn't be on stage speaking, and I don't hold that against Medea because I understand what she's up against. But what I do reject are the individuals and the groups who, instead of asking to be a part of this or working with us, having a conversation, they invested all their time into attacking us, smearing us in the most cynical way. And the reality is, building an anti-war movement is not about building anybody's personal vanity political project. It's not about building even necessarily individual parties. It's putting all of that together over the one umbrella of ending the war. We don't have the luxury in the grassroots when we're fighting for something to say that we want to play clubhouse politics and that we want to sit in the same houses, talk to the same people that we've been talking to for, in some cases, decades, other cases, years. And everybody thinks the same, everybody looks the same. That's not fun, that's not growth, and that's definitely not building a movement. So I actually think it's great that people can come together and discuss the areas where they disagree. And, you know, we can debate whether or not teenage girls should have to share locker rooms or compete in athletics against biological males another time. Because the reality is, if the people who run this country right now continue down this path, those other questions aren't even going to matter. They're not going to matter. We all know the stakes of this war. And our job in the grassroots is to understand the stakes of the war and communicate to the people the stakes of the war and the cost of the war. And I mean all the U.S. people, regardless of what they believe in on other issues. We are all affected by this, not just in terms of the taxpayer dollar cost. I mean, we should be communicating to people that the price of gas at the pump, the price of the food they're buying right now is all tied to this war. You think sanctioning Russia's oil means that Russia's not going to make money off their oil? No, it just means we're sanctioning ourselves, not able to buy that oil, and then suddenly the price of oil goes up. I wonder why that is. So it's about communicating the stakes and the real cost to people who might see the war itself as abstract. But it is also, I think, about being serious about what we're actually living through right now. I hear a lot of people talk about the lead up to World War III, and that's what we're experiencing right now. Hello. I would actually argue that we're already living through World War III, because the world war that we are going to experience, or that we are experiencing in our generation, is not of the same nature as the world wars past. There's not trenches. The nature of the war is different. The battle is different. It's a hybrid war. They have economic sanctions that they levy as part of this war. They wage a media war through your mind now, not just on the television, but through social media as well. And there's a proxy war. There's a covert aspect, which is what we're seeing play out in Ukraine. Don't think for a minute that it's a war between Ukraine and Russia. It's a war between the United States and Russia. And our leaders openly say it. You've heard them all. The biggest cheerleaders of sending more war to the front line in Ukraine always make this really odd point. They say, no, it actually is a good investment because we can give them the money and they'll fight the war and we don't have to. Haven't you heard that? You've heard them say it over and over again. I heard Hillary Clinton say it. I hear Lindsey Graham make it. And the people who say that, they are so demented because they are openly stating that their whole vision for the war is dependent on their ability to send every last Ukrainian father, son, brother, friend onto the front line. They are happy to fight to the death of the last Ukrainian. The United States is. And so standing here and organizing something like this is actually the real way to stand up for Ukrainian lives, because the war, they're the ones suffering the most. Yeah. And so that's why it is up to us to be serious about communicating the stakes and the cost. And just to point out one more time that the same system that is responsible for the train derailment in Ohio, where a corporation and the government basically now have nuked an entire U.S. city, is the same system that blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, creating the greatest environmental catastrophe of my lifetime. It's a corporate, oligarchical system. It's a militarist system. It's evil and it's rotten to the core. And when we are clear about those objectives and about the stakes, it's not so hard to put away our differences and to come together and rage against the war machine. So thank you all for doing it. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you to Nick and Angela once again. And no more war!